I've been in Louisiana for 4.5 years. I'm the state superintendent of education. I oversee the entirety of the school system. Well, after Katrina, obviously it was a city with no kids. It was a city without operating schools, and there was a chance to reimagine what schooling could be like for young people, especially historically disenfranchised kids, in a system that served some but didn't serve all of its kids equitably and with a sense of excellence. The plan over time was to take the schools under a different governance model, and of course there's a lot of policies and politics that go with that, but in reality what it did is to free parents to choose the schools that's best for their kids, to have the best educators in the city come to the surface, to really run their own schools free from the bureaucracy that has encumbered so many educators and so many school systems across the country. And while the result is that there's a long way yet to go until every New Orleans child is really achieving a productive adulthood and a path to the American middle class, the reality is that the outcomes that we're seeing are definitively and far beyond what it is that we were seeing 10 years ago. In the wake of a horrific tragedy has perhaps come some good for the long-term benefit of the children of the city. Well, I think there are some fantastic educators in New Orleans that I knew or knew of prior to Katrina, and over time those people, along with new educators, have been given a chance to surface their creative energies and do all the things that they had wanted to do previously on behalf of the kids who need it most. I think that's the great legacy of all of this, is the idea that creativity and innovation and responsiveness to the needs of parents and kids should be the first order of business rather than politics at the school board level. And as a result, you see some incredibly innovative and creative things happening for kids who need it. You see schools that are beating the odds against poverty. You see schools that are finding creative ways to bring kids from really, really tough circumstances and get them through college and into the workplace. You see schools that are doing amazing things for our youngest learners in early childhood. And all of those things existed before the storm. The question is, are people given the license to do it rather than have to ask permission? And that's the best thing, I think, that has come since Katrina. I think people have been given an impression that the school system is controlled by outside interests, or the school system is full of transplants rather than homegrown talent. And what I've learned is that actually the way that the system works now in New Orleans, for all of its imperfections, and there are still things that need to change, actually is one that gives the most creative, lifelong New Orleanians a shot at doing the work that they have always wanted to do on behalf of kids. Meaning that the system today is a system that's run by parents and educators, not a system run by politicians. That's the envy of school systems and people trying to enact progressive policies and change on behalf of children nationwide. That simple idea that the people who are closest to the kids, the most talented, innovative, creative people, most of them lifelong New Orleanians, should be given permission, should have license to make change in the lives of the kids who grew up here. There's two things that need to happen. First is a basic question of the assurance of equity, of access and opportunity for every child in the system. Still today we have students with mental health issues, students with disabilities, our earliest learners, our kids who are in need of career and technical training. All of these populations of kids are not yet finding the services they need within the constellation of schools that we have in our city. Those basic issues of equity have to change. And that's not just a Recovery School District issue. That's an issue the Orleans Parish School Board can, and I believe will, under Superintendent Lewis's leadership, take control of and provide for the most disadvantaged youth. On the other hand, there's a question of excellence. It's not just about equity of access, it's about how strong is what's happening in the classroom. We know that teachers need more years of experience. They need a professional path to growing. They need to see that they can live here and provide for their families here in the long run. We need to talk about issues of diversity and issues of inclusiveness in our schools. We need to talk about the role of the middle class and not just talking about low-income youth in our schools. We need to talk about curriculum. We need to talk about the sophistication of schools in making curricular decisions and the pipeline for future school leaders. Those are the things that come to mind when you think not just about equity of access for kids, but a truly excellent school for every young man and woman. We've come a long way, but we're not yet remotely there in all of those areas, and I'm excited about the next 10 years as a time to make great progress in those areas. The thing that excites me about New Orleans is, of the 14,000 school systems in this country, there's one whose theory of how the world can really change for kids starts with the idea of putting power in the hands of the people who are closest to the kids. That means a system where parents can choose their schools and schools have to value that choice that a parent makes. But it also means that educators themselves get 98 cents on the dollar and are empowered to make choices on behalf of the kids that they know and love, rather than a group of politicians or distant bureaucrats being the ones who make those determinations. That shouldn't be a radical thing, but unfortunately in American education, it is a radical thing. It's an uncommon thing. And I think that's why the results that we're getting are uncommonly excellent. The question now is, how can we make them more excellent, truly excellent, and how can we sustain them over time?